How are you feeling? How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer.
Eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital.
That's difficult to answer.
this the end? There's a noise inside my head of crying people facing death. Is this the end? Is this the end? I'm burning in the stone. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in the stone. What have we done to the world? What have we done to the world? I'm burning in the stone. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in the stone. This is the final
We're going to war against James Lindsay. You keep James Lindsay up at night. I got to come and visit you in his head where you live rent free. I got to come and visit Carlin. Knock, knock. We're inside James Lindsay's brain. We're inside Chris Rufo and James Lindsay's brain where she has taken up a residence there permanently and she's performing. She's doing shows there. She got a 10-year contract to do her talk show. No, but thank you very much. You're right. The left is going to come back pretty hard. Empire Strikes Back again.
He's calling out cults and conspiracies wild, gnostic sex cults and theories compiled. But one question's raised and it's block on the spot. No room for dissent in the world he's got. But the crowd starts to laugh and they're starting to see a whole lot of words that just don't agree. Oh, Emperor James, are you feeling the breeze? Might wanna look down, see what's caught at the knees. He's the Emperor with no clothes, strutting around like nobody knows, shouting loud, thinking he's wise, but he's bearing it all to everyone's eyes. He's the Emperor, yeah, with no disguise. Slipped down by his own price. Your fat is an intellectual line. Oprah's got mind control, powers divine. He's calling Saint Michael the devil in charge and telling the Catholics they got it too large. Oh, James, don't you know it's a tricky game when you're calling out folks, but you're doing the same. You say it's the truth only you understand, but the crowd's got a mirror showing just where you stand. He's the Emperor with no clothes, strutting around like nobody knows, shouting loud, thinking he's wise, but he's bearing it all to everyone's eyes. He's the Emperor, yeah, with no disguise, stripped down by his own pride. Start to fade and the truth comes around. His theories unravel like threads on the ground. The court starts to giggle, the people all cheer, for the emperor's naked, the truth's finally here. He's the emperor with no clothes, strutting around like nobody knows, shouting loud, thinking he's wise, but he's bearing it all to everyone's eyes. He's the emperor, yeah, with no disguise, stripped down by his own pride. So here's to the lesson, let's give it a toast to emperors walking in nothing but boast. Join Carlin's cult and open your eyes. She's here to expose James's epic lies.
Welcome to the cult, guys. Welcome to the cult. Happy Monday. I hope everyone's doing well. The Cult is a show that I stream Monday through Friday on this here YouTube channel, Rumble, on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, where we talk about whatever I feel like talking about because it's my cult and I'll do what I want. Naruto, thank you for being a member of the channel for 14 months with Brett Cooper out of the Daily Wire. I'm guessing their Snow White movie is dead now that she was the star of the movie. I don't know. Probably. I don't know. But you know what? If the Daily Wire is not investing money in doing another flipping remake, hey, I guess good for us. Good for us. All right. So we were going to do something completely different today. And actually, I really did not want to do what we're going to do today. And my community that's in my Discord can attest to this. Because my community in my Discord has been haranguing me, and I say that with love, guys. I do say it with love. In my Discord and in my group chats on Twitter saying, Carlin, are we going to watch this James thing? Are we going to watch this James Cope stream? Are we going to watch this James Cope stream? And every time someone has asked me if we were going to watch this James Cope stream that James Lindsay did last week on his main channel to justify why he perpetrated a hoax on people, my answer was like, I really don't want to. I really don't. I'm tired of this. I really don't want to. Like, I'm so effing sick of James Lindsay. Honestly. And I have a whole research schedule planned for this week, and we're going to start it today. And I want to be doing research. We were going to be listening to a book called Socialist Reconstruction, which is talking about the vision for the future socialist utopia. Yeah, Sam asked me twice, and twice I gave him the same answer, which is that I really don't want to. And then, a funny thing happened. The groypers got themselves in a little bit of trouble over the weekend on Twitter, where they were photoshopping the faces of children onto, one specific child, onto a meme that child shouldn't have been photoshopped onto. And, the parent of that child, who had the child's photo pinned to the top of his Twitter, where he has 250,000 followers, got a little upset. And privately, in the group chats that I'm in with the groypers, and I was in the group chat where this whole incident started, privately, a lot of people said that this was gross. In fact, it was pretty much universally denounced by the groypers. It was denounced in private by Nick. It was also later denounced in public by Nick. I said multiple times I thought it was gross and I don't think it was a good idea. And I think it went too far. And even the person who did it said, yeah, maybe we went too far. And so this is something that was literally universally denounced, okay? However, I had a problem with the father because the father of the kid, let me break this down for you. I don't believe for one red second that the father of this kid is doing anything but trying to exploit this situation for internet clout and engagement and money. And the reason I say that is I've seen DMs that groypers have had with this person where he's basically telling them, bend down to me and call me your king. Otherwise, I'm going to report you to the cops. And no one is actually believing that he's going to go to the cops, to be honest. Like, no one actually believes this. No one thinks that's going to happen. And he's trying to get the groypers to bend the knee to him so he can get public clout from it. And it's fucking gross. And so what I said about this guy is that I think that if he didn't want his child's picture exploited, then he should do what most parents I know do and not put his children's pictures on the internet. Like, this is like basic 101 level, guys. It really, really is. This guy that made this big stink about the groypers over the weekend has 250,000 Twitter followers. He was the one that had a picture of his kid literally pinned at the very top of his page. It wasn't like anyone had to go hunting for it. And if you as a parent are going to first of all, be a dick on the internet. Secondly, put your kids' photos out there publicly on the internet without any sort of censorship, without any sort of like privacy protection, then I'm sorry if bad actors come along and do nefarious things with those pictures. That's your fucking fault. That's your fault. If you don't want your kid, and by the way, his kid's picture is now scraped and used in AI because he put it on Twitter. There's nothing stopping anyone from doing whatever they want with those kids' pictures because he made the choice to put them out on the internet publicly. And I'm not going to apologize for saying that. I'm just not. I denounced the photoshopping of the face onto the cartoon meme. I denounced it very, very clearly. Of course, that denouncement doesn't matter, by the way. That never matters. It never fucking matters. But I'm also going to say that I don't think parents should be putting the faces of their kids on the internet, especially when they have 250,000 followers, especially when they're pinning it to the top of their feed. That's just retarded. And so what happened? What happened when I said, you know what, bro? You really shouldn't be putting your kids out on the internet. What happened? Of course, I get called a pedophile. Guys, just pro tip, guys. A real pedophile is not going to say, don't put your kids' photos on the internet. That's not advice that you're ever going to get from a real pedophile. We don't know why, because a real pedophile actually wants you to put your kids' pictures on the internet. And my advice was very clear. It was like, maybe don't do that and you won't have this problem. Because it, like, listen, again, I denounced the guy who did it, but both things contributed to causing the problem. I'm sorry. And I was called a pedophile for it over and over and over again. And I'm very used to that because retards on the internet have now thrown around the word pedophile so much that it literally means nothing. And isn't that sad? Isn't that sad for people who have actually been the victims of childhood sexual abuse? They've actually been victims of real pedophiles. Isn't it sad that people who claim to be the arbiters of saving children, they have thrown around this word so willy-nilly that it literally means nothing anymore. It literally means nothing. And I'm sorry, that's their fault. It's not my fault. I started telling them to stop doing this shit over 2 years ago. When they started throwing around the word groomer to mean anyone they disagree with, do you know how many times I've been called a groomer on the internet? I don't even like kids. I don't go near kids. I have broken more stories about grooming in schools than almost any other independent journalist in the country. Do you know how many times I've been called a groomer by these people just because I don't agree with them on some things that, quite frankly, usually have nothing to do with the actual conversation around grooming? Probably hundreds of times at this point. They throw around these words like they have no meaning. They just use them to own their enemies on the internet. In the meantime, there are real fucking problems in the world that none of them are actually contributing to solving, but they got an own for internet clout, bro. I'm going to show you more about this in a second. Joe from Snow, thank you for the super chat. Here's my first ever super chat to you. About time since I've followed your work for years, but very rarely catch you live because of the time difference. Appreciate your work. Hey, Joe, I'm so glad you were able to join us today. Hopefully you're able to join us more in the future, and thank you for the support. I really do appreciate it. So what happened? What happened when internet retards started calling me a pedophile the other day? Oh, wow. Look, who started retweeting it? James Lindsay. James Lindsay retweets his favorite internet retards to 500,000 Twitter followers, basically amplifying that he's subtly insinuating that I'm a pedophile now. Now, James Lindsay has been trying to make character attacks against me for a really long ass time. James has called me a narcissist. James has called me a sociopath. James has said I have borderline personality disorder. James has said that I tried to channel Hitler because I watched a video. James has said that I tried to have sex with him when there's literally no evidence of that, and I never even so much as flirted with James. James has said, what else has he said about me? I don't even know. But do you know what's funny about James Lindsay? Do you know what's funny? Do you know what James Lindsay has never done? Does anyone in the chat want to guess? James has called me all sorts of names. He's insinuated I've had serious personality disorders. He spread a rumor saying I tried to fuck him when there is literally no evidence of that. I went through my entire DM chat history with James on a live video to show there was no such, there was no hearts, there were no kissy faces, there were no invitation to drinks. I've met James twice in my life and I was around him for about 10 minutes both times. No, he still runs around telling people that I wanted to fuck him for years. What has James never, ever, 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 ever done? Well, you're right. He's never provided proof. That's true. That's true. He's never called me a liar because James cannot intellectually argue with my work. James has never once been able to grapple with the intellectual content of my work on the left. He's never intellectually debated my work on the left. He won't even acknowledge my work on the left. He will not provide any counter to the work I've done. There's no criticism. There's nothing. The reason that James Lindsay is constantly making these character attacks against me is because he cannot compete intellectually with my work, and he damn well knows it. I laid out a very specific set of grievances with James. You can find them on the Better Discourses Substack, which is Carlin, KARLYN.substack.com. Scroll down a little bit. I challenged James Lindsay to a public debate, and in this, you can see some of the attacks James has made against me. I documented all of them. He's put out photoshopped things about me. He's done all sorts of crazy shit. But if you scroll down to the bottom of this post, what you're going to find... Oh, James has also stolen my work, too, by the way. You'll find a very, very, very specific list of grievances. I have not been unclear about this. My issues with James Lindsay were never about personal attacks. They were never about character attacks. It was always about the intellectual content of his work. I have said over and over and over again, here are the intellectual grievances that I have with him. I've challenged him to a live debate. I said, I'll debate you anytime, anywhere, as long as I can use primary source video evidence. All this is out there publicly. And what does James do? He just continues to make character attacks. That's it. He has never said I was wrong. He's never accepted the debate challenges. James attacks your character so he doesn't have to attack the merits of the intellectual arguments that are being made. Of course, this means I'm winning. Because if he has to resort to character assassinations, he has no substance. He just says I have a personality disorder I don't have. He can't debate, and he knows it. He's using the same tactics of the left. That's another reason James is pissed off at me, because I pointed that out. This is the same reason why James never goes on any show with anyone who would challenge him intellectually. He stands no effing chance against me at all. And so instead, he does things like this, where he retweets people who are calling me basically a pedophile. And that happened yesterday. And even still today, I wasn't going to do this cope video of James's. I wasn't going to look at it because I didn't want to. And then And then, oh wait, not that one. Oh wait, this is from 2 hours ago. James, again, for the third time in less than 24 hours, is retweeting one of his friends, Psycho Frank. And let me show you Psycho Frank's Twitter feed in a second, because Frank has lost his fucking mind about me. James, again, just 2 hours ago, was retweeting someone calling me a pedophile because he can't intellectually argue me. Now, let's look at Psycho Frank's Twitter feed so you guys can just see why I call him Psycho Frank. It's literally all about me. Oh, by the way, Frank is now trying to figure out a way to report me to the American Psychological Association with one of those clout-chasing gays from last week. By the way, I don't have to have a license to practice the types of psychology I practice, so they're going to have a really hard time canceling my psychological license because I don't have one, because I'm an industrial organizational psychologist and I don't need one. Haha, too bad, so sad. I win again, losers. Frank's retweeting Chris Burnett talking about me. Frank's entire Twitter feed right now is basically almost all, with rare exception, about me. Look at this. Hang on. Hang on. He was also complaining about something else yesterday. Oh, there he's talking about me again. There. Oh, that's a photoshopped, unflattering picture of me. How great is that? They photoshopped a picture to make me look fucking huge, which is what they do all the time. Oh, there's me again on Psycho Frank's Twitter feed. Oh, there's me again. I'm just scrolling down his feed literally right now. Oh, there's me again. There's me again. All this on Psycho Frank's Twitter feed. There's me again. There's me again. Me again, me again, me again, me again. This is all from the source that James Lindsay uses to call me a pedophile. Basically, his entire fucking Twitter feed is about me at all times. So I have a rule of thumb. I have a rule of thumb. If James Lindsay wants to be a triggered little bitch, if James Lindsay wants to continue to call me a pedophile when I don't even like kids, I'm never around kids, I've exposed more grooming in schools than he has, by the way. Literally, I've exposed more instances of grooming in schools than James Lindsay has. But I'm a pedophile? Huh. Okay. Well, if James wants to play these games, then I'm more than happy to play these games as well. And what we're going to do today is we are going to listen to James's Cope stream, where he's talking about how he hoaxed people into believing that the woke right were communists, basically, and he's trying to make excuses from it because he got called out on it. Now, if you want the full story for this, one of the places you can go is over again to my Substack, which is Carlyn, Karlyn, .substack.com, and where you want to go is go to this article called James Lindsay's Repressive Tolerance, because James is actually implementing Marxist tactics at this point. He's implementing Herbert Marcuse's idea of repressive tolerance, and I break it all down in this Substack, but one of the things I talked about in this Substack is about the hoax that James Lindsay perpetrated, where he pretended that he rewrote, or that he took, like, what he did is he said he took like 6 pages from the Communist Manifesto and he changed a word or two here and there, and then he submitted it to a conservative Christian nationalist publication, and then they published it. And so then James is like, the woke right exists, they published the Communist Manifesto. But when people actually started comparing it to the actual Communist Manifesto, they found out that James rewrote like 90% of it. So did James actually prove anything? Or did James perpetrate a hoax for internet clout to advance a narrative? And why is he advancing a narrative? Because he has financial ties to Israel. The man that funds New Discourses, his name is Michael O'Fallon. Michael O'Fallon is on the record as having meetings with the Israeli government, and now all of a sudden James is the most pro-Israel person in the world, and he's attacking anyone like Candace Owens, like Dave Smith, like pretty much anyone that dares to question the pro-Israel narrative. and he's saying they're all woke right, there are really two things that you have to do to be part of the woke right, according to James. You have to not be a classical liberal, not endorse classical liberalism, and you have to be, you're not Israel first, essentially. Which is funny, because when I was loading this video on James's New Discourses channel, you know what it did? It served me an Israel ad. Literally, when I loaded this video today, I got like a 3-minute pro-Israel ad at the beginning of this video. Now, personally, I don't actually care if you support Israel and Zionism or if you don't. Like, I welcome all political perspectives on this channel, and I mean that. I have literally the entire spectrum of political belief on my channel. I have everyone from, I have legit National Socialists who watch my channel, I have dissident right-wingers, I have groypers, I have conservatives, I have MAGA people, I have independents, I have libertarians, I have disaffected lefties, I even have some Democrats and progressives, and believe it or not, I actually have communists and socialists who watch my channel because they know that I know more about their ideology than they do, and they like the content that I put out there because they don't find it without me. And so I literally have the entire spectrum of people that watch my channel. So I don't give a flying fuck if you are a Zionist or an anti-Zionist. It really doesn't matter to me. As long as I can have my position and you don't try to cancel me over it, it's cool, man. It's cool. But we need to be intellectually honest with what's going on with James Lindsay. He's not concerned about the woke right. I brought this up to him years ago. Literally, in 2021, I started talking about the dissident right and all of the problems that they were causing with the anti-CRT legislation, because they were actually causing problems with it at the time. And I said to James and Chris Rufo, this is going to be a problem. The only reason that I was even paying attention to Nick Fuentes back before Nick and I were on friendlier terms, or less friendly terms rather, than we are now, is because I was actually worried about Nick Fuentes and the groypers, and they're getting in the way of the things that I cared about. Now, after October 7th, a lot of things changed. I am now significantly more friendly with Nick Fuentes and the groypers than I am with James Lindsay and Chris Rufo, because it became very clear to me after October 7th that we have different values, that I align. I don't agree with everything Nick says. In fact, there are a lot of things I don't agree with. But big picture wise, I align way more with Nick Fuentes and the groypers right now than I do with James Lindsay and Chris Rufo, because I'm not a classical liberal, because I don't believe classical liberalism is going to save us, because I'm not going to put Israel ahead of the needs of Americans. None of that's going to happen. And in exchange for that, I get called a pedophile, a narcissist, a sociopath, borderline personality disorder. I get told I'm part of the woke right. I get told I'm a Gnostic, Theosophist, Zoroastrian, whatever the hell else James is saying these days about the Gnostic cult. Apparently I'm all of those things. None of this is intellectually honest. So if James wants to play these games, we're going to listen to his hoax podcast, and we're going to have a little response to it. Now, before we get into that, couple quick things, and I want to talk about this guy. So, being that I've been at war with James Lindsay for a while, a lot of people said to me, Carlin, why don't you reach out to Arun McIntyre? And I said, I don't really like him that much, so I don't want to. I've believed for a long time Arun McIntyre is a fraud. I believed he was an intellectually dishonest fake. I believe he was only interested in his own personal clout and being famous on the internet and blah, 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 blah. Like, he was just like all the others. And then he started speaking out against James. Now, he doesn't speak out against James as strongly as I do. Arun McIntyre is more like, I don't believe in foreign aid for everyone, as though that's a bold position. But eventually, my audience wore me down, and they said, Carlin, why don't you just send him an email? So I did. I DM'd him on Substack, and I just wanted this is an update, guys. Arun McIntyre is exactly the person that I said he was from the very beginning, and I'm going to prove it. So I said to him, hello, you and I don't have the greatest history of communication, but I'm hoping we can put that aside because we have a common foe that is more important. James Lindsay. I've spent the last 3 years doing deep dives into the real far left, and I've known for a long time that James's work is unhinged from what real communists and socialists say and do. I have a massive library of primary source evidence, including video and audio recordings of leftist events, trainings, and everything says can be, that should have been everything I say. Everything I say can be backed up with that evidence. I would love to find a way to discuss this with you. So I literally said to him, listen, you and I have not always had a great relationship. I don't like you, you don't like me. But I'm willing to put that aside. I have this massive fucking resource. Do you want to talk about it? Do you actually want to show people how James's work is intellectually unhinged from anything the left says and does? Now, if Arun McIntyre actually cared about any of this, and if he was an actual fully formed adult, what he would have said was, yeah, maybe we should put our differences aside and work towards the greater good. And, maybe if I really care about defeating the left, maybe this evidence might actually be, valuable. Is that what he said? No, of course not. And we always know people's real motives based on their behavior, guys. Never listen to the words that come out of someone's mouth. Always look at how they act, especially how they act in private. Arun McIntyre replied, he said, "That would be great, but you wished harm on my family, so despite opposing Lindsay's terrible behavior, I can't validate your own." Now, is it true that I wished harm on his family? Nope. No, it's not. Now, what Arun McIntyre is referring to here is this article. This article that I wrote about him in May of 2023. So now we're talking about he has his feminine little panties in a twist over me making an intellectual point utilizing him a year and a half ago. And you know what? Let me just show you what my response was to him, and then we'll look at this article, and you guys can decide whether or not he's being intellectually honest. I said, well, your actions will lead to the transing of kids, which harms a lot of people. But alas, I'm happy to tell people that we were wrong to give you a second chance and that you're the fraud I always knew you were. And then I said, how funny. You think you're so different than James, and yet you're exactly the same. What do I mean by that? We're going to take a brief look at this article. We're not going to read the whole thing. But the fact that Arun McIntyre, in private, had the gall to say, you wished harm on my family, it's indicative of one of three things. Either Arun McIntyre didn't actually read this article, which means he's intellectually dishonest. Either Arun McIntyre read this article but didn't understand it, which means he's a low IQ retard that's beneath me. Or, and this is my bet, Arun McIntyre read this article, understood precisely the point that I was making, and is being willfully, intellectually dishonest about what it is. And the point that I'm making, guys, is that people like him pretend to care about fighting the left. They pretend to, and this is why he is exactly like James Lindsay. They pretend to care about defeating the left and knowing how much damage the left is doing in the world. But when it comes to doing substantive things to fight back against the left, they refuse to do it. And they put their own ego ahead of anything that's actually important every single time. So let me show you what this article actually says. Let me show you what this article actually says. So essentially, this article came up, and again, you can read this on the Substack. I was being a troll on Twitter. I was being a troll. I'll admit it, I was being a troll. This was a long-ass time ago, by the way. I was being a troll. Only a literal retard would interpret that. Are you smart enough to be here? What's your IQ? Because I'm actually about to show you, like, here's the thing, bro. Here's the thing. This is a smart people YouTube channel. This is not a dumb people YouTube channel. This is a smart people YouTube channel. I'm literally walking you through evidence right now, which means you don't know what you're talking about. So what's your IQ, Lonely Octopus? Are you smart enough to be here? Let us know in the chat. We're stopping the whole stream just for you. Are you smart enough to be here? Are you smart enough to look at evidence? What's your IQ? What's your IQ? That's not what I asked you. What's your IQ? Are you smart enough to be here? We're waiting. We're waiting. Are you smart enough to look at primary source evidence? Are you smart enough to engage in an intellectually honest discussion? We're waiting. If you don't answer me, you're permanently banned from my channel in 30 seconds. We're waiting. Well, are you capable of looking at intellectually honest? Are you capable of looking at evidence in an intellectually honest way? You got 20 seconds. Are you capable of looking at evidence in an intellectually honest way or not? Or are you exactly like Arun McIntyre and an intellectual fraud? Which is it? Let us know in the chat. 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8. You sure? Because if you say something stupid like that again in my chat, you're going to be permanently banned. You get one last chance. So, I was being a troll on Twitter, and Arun McIntyre, who I had never spoken to, never interacted with, called me a classical liberal. Now listen, I've literally never claimed to be a classical liberal in my life. That's just like a fraudulent idea. That's never something I've said I was. So I ended up responding to him saying, "Hi Arun, when will you do your job and cover autistic sex education? I know you're several months behind me. We all expect that. But don't you think parents of autistic kids have a right to know that schools are transitioning them?" I'm going to take you back to early 2023, when I was the only person to go inside a private training where they were talking about autistic sex education that was actually grooming students. Like this is real. This was a training that was given to every single sex educator in the country via the National Sex Ed Conference. This was a training where they were talking about teaching autistic kids how to masturbate without their parents being there, teaching autistic kids how to talk dirty, teaching autistic kids how to use sex toys. Like this presentation, if you haven't seen it, there's a whole playlist about it on my channel. It's right at the top of my channel. This is one of the most crazy, offensive, ridiculous, quite frankly, really damaging things. And this was one of the first major pieces of evidence. Again, this was a long ass time ago. This was almost 2 years ago now. This was one of the first major pieces of evidence that existed in the cultural sphere about how precisely the left was targeting autistic children to make them believe that they were trans or non-binary or queer. I recorded the whole thing. I put it out there, and no one would actually cover it. And Arun McIntyre is one of the people that had access to covering it and refused to do so. So when he decided to lie about me because he had his feelings in a twist over me saying something he didn't like on Twitter, I didn't respond yelling at him. I said, "Arun, when are you going to cover something that actually matters? When are you going to cover something that actually matters?" Did he ever respond? No. He said, "Well, I thought she was part of the non-woke liberal brigade." Nope, I wasn't, which means Arun McIntyre can't do basic research, but apparently she now claims the title of ANCAP. Yes, correct. At that point, I was indeed an anarcho-capitalist. Indeed. I like to rib the libertarians, but don't worry, I won't put this one on you. And so then I said, "Excellent work, Arun. Congrats on reading a Twitter bio. Now, I'll wait to see how long it takes for you to do your one job and inform parents of autistic kids what the schools are doing to them. Here, I did your journalism for you." So again, Arun McIntyre is doing the thing that these clout-chasing bullshitters do and just shit-talking me on Twitter and pretending there's no greater big picture and pretending there's nothing that more, and pretending that he's the person that cares about saving the kids, but then he's not telling parents what they need to know. And this is one of the things that I've always pushed you guys. I know exactly what conservative media is not covering about the left. The amount of things that happen coming out of the far left that do impact kids in school today, that are done at schools all over the country, your mind would be absolutely blown if you knew how many stories conservative media does not cover. If you knew everything that I know, you would be just as pissed off at these intellectually dishonest fools as I am, because I know exactly where the discrepancies are. I've seen it firsthand for years and years and years. I have found story after story after story of some of the craziest shit that you have ever seen in schools, and they will not cover it because it does not fit their narrative. People like Arun McIntyre purposefully lie to their audience. They purposefully deceive their audience. They purposefully gatekeep information that is not relevant to their narrative, and this is exactly why he's exactly like James Lindsay. And no, I do not apologize. So what did I say? What did I say? If Arun McIntyre refuses to tell his audience about this when he is well aware of it, then in my opinion, he deserves to have his kids trans in programs like this. So Arun McIntyre says, "She wished harm on my family." No. Nope, that's not what was done, Arun. That's not what was done. So either you are stupid or you're intellectually dishonest, Arun. Which one is it? I'm betting intellectually dishonest. What I said is that if he fails to inform his audience, if he fails to tell people what is going on with some of the most absurd, like toxic things imaginable that are happening in public schools right now, then why aren't his kids going through that? Why is Arun McIntyre completely fine with damning other people's kids to go through their programs by not adequately informing them? And if he's so okay with other people's kids going through those programs, then his kids should suffer as a result. That's what I said. And no, I'm not going to take it back. I'm not sorry. His refusal to engage with things that matter should have consequences. Every media personality who is not reporting on what is happening in schools deserves to experience the full consequence of their lack of action. They deserve to have all their kids transitioned. Maybe then their focus will be on things that matter and telling parents what they need to know. Carlin, you're just so mean. Why are you so mean? Do you know who's not going to be nice to you? Do you know who's going to be nice to you? The teacher who will smile to your face, lie to you, and then socially transition your kid's gender without telling you. I promise I'll look a lot nicer when you meet the nice teacher that I've been screaming to warn you about for years. And the people who have the ability to report on this information to millions of parents but refuse to will look downright evil. That is my point. That is my point. Every single commentator, every single pundit, every single influencer, every single news outlet that refuses to inform parents of what they need to know deserve to experience the consequences of their actions. Do I wish that on anyone? No, which is why I have exposed more grooming in schools than almost any other independent journalist in the country, because I actually care about this stuff. And as a result of that, I'm told by Arun McIntyre that I wished harm on his children, and I just don't want to have a conversation about who the real far left is because you wished harm on my children. He's either stupid or he's intellectually dishonest, and that's why he's a fraud. And that's why we now dismiss him entirely. Quite frankly, it's kind of good for me because I thought his content was really boring anyway. I've always thought he was really boring. But now we know he's not only really boring, but also an intellectual fraud. And so we can move on. We can move on. And if you guys want to read the rest of that article, and you can, again, see the primary source receipts for yourself, it's all up on my Substack. That's carlin.substack.com. Arun McIntyre, the Blaze, deserves to have his kids transitioned. Yep. Not sorry. Not sorry. Hey, Rationalist, I asked you never to mention that website in the chat, didn't I? Please never mention that website in my chat. I know you mean well, but Chris Burnett is not of interest to me. Chris Burnett is a psycho, and I'm not actually really scared of him. Yeah, they deserve the consequences of their inaction. And maybe if they get the consequences of their inaction, maybe they'll take it a little bit more seriously when it comes to other people's kids. All right, guys, we are going to move into the James Lindsay Cope stream. Now, as a reminder, if you want to support the work I'm doing, you can, of course, always head over to my Substack. Not there. Here, how about this? Which is carlin.substack.com. That's KARLYN.substack.com. Sign up for $8 a month, $80 a year. You're going to be able to join us for a member-only call. That's going to be starting at 7 p.m., so about an hour from now. You can get access to that by going to the Unwoke Roundup email. It's scrolling all the way down to the bottom. Underneath this red box, you're going to find access to the private Zoom call that's going to be happening in about an hour. You're also going to find access to the supporter Discord. Of course, you do also support the work I'm doing when you do that, which I really, really do appreciate. I also want to let you know that I've got a couple new book chapters up on speaksocialist.substack.com. This is where I'm writing my next book called Reeducation, the Definitive Anti-Communist Guide to Decoding the Left. And I'm putting the draft chapters up before the book's even published so you can read the chapters as the book is actually coming together. There are two new chapters up. One is called The First Capitalists. The other is called Imperialism, Colonization, Colonialism, Decolonialism, or Decolonization rather. You can read those chapters now along with all the other chapters that I've written. I'm banging out a lot of content on the book, guys. I really want to get it done by the end of the year. I know I wanted to get it done a little bit earlier, but I really want to get it done by the end of the year. I'm working very, very hard. And I think I might be able to get close to doing it, which is very, very exciting. But if you want to read the book as it's coming together, head over to speaksocialist.substack.com. This is a separate membership from my main Substack. This is $10 a month, $100 a year, gets you access to all this premium content. And just as a reminder, this is the last day of the Unwoke Art merchandise sale, because this is the last day that I can guarantee stuff will get to you by Christmas. So if you're still looking for some last minute Christmas gifts, head over to unwokeart.com, spend over $100 or more, and you will automatically get 25% off at checkout. I have some amazing anti-communist designs. We've even got anti-communist Christmas designs. We've got Trump stuff. We've got all sorts of great stuff that you can buy in the Unwoke Art store. Just click on your design of choice, and you'll see what merch we have it on. So it'll be t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, hoodies, mugs, journals, prints, stickers a lot of the time. So $100 or more in the store gets you 25% off. Great opportunity to get some last minute gifts. And this deal is going to end at midnight tonight. So get over there right now. Get your stuff. Yeah, daily reminder. James Lindsay is paid by Israel to be a traitor to America. How true? Well, we're not going to be able to listen to this whole thing, but we are going to be able to listen to a good little bit of it. Everyone, please make sure you mount the like button for me. Everyone, please subscribe to the channel if you have not already subscribed to the channel. Let me just get set up here. Bing. And then we'll do this. There we go. There we go. There we go. There we go. I'm new to the channel from like a week ago. What is your political ideology? I'm extremely far right, to the point of kind of being a little fascist a little bit. But honestly, my political ideology doesn't matter. What matters now is defeating, well, there's a couple things that need to happen. Well, okay, my political ideology is I want to do what is required to defeat the left. That's it. That's my political ideology at the moment. In my heart of hearts, I am actually an anarcho-capitalist. But my political ideology at the moment is I will do what is required to defeat the left. And that might involve doing some things that some people find distasteful. And once we defeat the left, we can bicker from there about whatever else you guys want to bicker about. But until the left is defeated, nothing else really matters. That is my political ideology. All right, let's get into this.
Didn't just copy the rhetoric
Hang on, got to go back a little bit more, sorry.
at the beginning, but we're going to go into the document.
All labor unions are inherently leftist. All labor unions are leftist. That's not to say that all union members are leftist, because that's just not true. But all labor unions are inherently leftist. So yeah, it does involve defeating the labor unions. Hang on. I just got to fix my sound over here. Okay.
I produced where I actually did a side here at the beginning is
Come on. Go back to the beginning. There it goes.
Hey everybody, it's James Lindsay, and you are listening to the New Discourses podcast, and we're going to talk about the hoax I did that broke the conservative side of the internet. In fact, what I want to do in this episode is actually to go into the document that I produced, not explaining myself for the hoax, which I've done in writing, I've done on social media. I don't feel like I really need to rehash that in a podcast. I'll give it a little lip service here at the beginning, but we're going to go into the document I produced where I actually did a side-by-side. I'm just going to read the side-by-side I published. That's the main purpose of this podcast.
Suzanne,
I'm going to go through
okay.
the Communist Manifesto, a little piece at a time. Then I'm going to go through...
Suzanne, you never have to apologize to me. I'm not going to tell you what to do, so don't worry about it. Thank you, though.
The part from American Reformer, a little bit at a time. And I'm going to leave it to you all. The goal here is not for me to say, whoops, nailed him to the wall, although I think I did. It is for me to say, listen for yourself. Don't listen to the hype. Don't listen to my claim. Don't listen to the opposing claims. All James did was change a few words, or most of the words. James changed 90% of the words. That was a functionally illiterate criticism, by the way. If you saw that red text criticism that was put out by a guy named Jim Hansen and spread by all of the little deflectionists, what you're going to discover is that what they did is put it into Microsoft Word and saw how many words are in different places. That's functionally illiterate, as though words and sentences don't have meaning or content to their meaning. Oh, James just copied the rhetoric. Is that what I did? Is that what you're going to hear? First of all, copying demagoguery from one of the worst, most evil, and most dangerous demagogues in history, Karl Marx, is really not something you should be proud of. But no, I didn't just copy the rhetoric. I copied the fundamental logic of Marxism. And that's something.
James sounds a little defensive, doesn't he? No, I did not just copy the rhetoric. Yes, you did, James. You took out most indications that this was a communist document and you changed it to something completely different. So yes, you did.
Fundamentally different. And so I want you to hear that for yourself, right? I'm not going to get all defensive like I'm already starting to do. I'll only for a few minutes here give you a little bit of an explanation of what this hoax is in case you aren't aware and why I did it. So the hoax was this. And for those of you who somehow at this point still don't know, this is not new to me, right? So back in 2017 and 18, I wrote a series of academic hoaxes with Peter Boghossian and Helen Pluckrose. The kind of trial balloon for that project, which became known as the Grievance Studies Affair, was called The Conceptual Penis as a Social Construct. We argued that penises are not real, they're better thought of as social constructs, and that social construct causes all of our problems, especially climate change. You can go read it, it's really hilarious. And then we wrote a series of what have come to be known as the Grievance Studies hoaxes. I don't know how many of them are actually hoaxes. For me, the first 6 or 7 are actually hoaxes. And then after that, we were doing something far closer to parody, where we were taking their ideas, their words, their concepts, and structuring them into absurd papers. And those all got accepted. The hoaxes, in fact, where we were kind of very naive and very silly about things, actually didn't get accepted. And so one of those grievance studies papers that we wrote back in the day got a lot of fanfare. We tried 3 different attempts at this, and only one of them worked. I'm surprised that any of them did. But we took chapter 12 from Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf, where Hitler describes the organization of the Nazi Party, and we rewrote it, taking out our movement and replacing it with intersectional feminism. And then where Hitler talks about his various enemies in the chapter, whether that's going to be the Marxists, whether it's going to be the liberals, or whatever it's going to be that he's against, we replace that with different kinds of feminism, like neoliberal feminism is one of the things that we went after, and something called choice feminism was another thing that we went after. And we don't really have to get into what those are. Choice feminism basically means that, when a woman chooses to live her life the way that she wants to, absent being told how to live her life or be a certain way, then she's being a feminist. And it turns out that the woke feminists, the intersectional feminists, hate that. They are very against it. They see it as a betrayal. They see it as selfishness. They see it as not sufficiently based in solidarity. And so that was that hoax. And this, I think, was a thin rewriting, right? We were careful about how we presented it. We at first at least didn't overstate the case. It got too tedious to try to explain it all the time in all of its full, qualified to death detail. And we started to just kind of say, yeah, we rewrote Mein Kampf and then let it fly. But the matter of fact is that it was a pretty watered down rewrite. We changed all the wording so that a plagiarism checker wouldn't be able to find it if they ran it through one. We interlaced sentences of theory in between almost every other sentence of Mein Kampf. We wrote a very long introduction that was completely...
One of the things that I thought about when it came out that James had written this hoax paper and almost completely rewritten the Communist Manifesto, when he claimed he just changed a word or two here and there, I immediately thought, did anyone go back and read the paper where he said he took Mein Kampf and basically changed a couple words and got it published? Because did he actually rewrite basically 90% of Mein Kampf and that's how he got it published, and then he claimed he got Mein Kampf published and just no one is bothering to read it? James just admitted that he basically did the same thing to Mein Kampf as he did in this hoax paper. He said, I inserted long theory in between the lines in Mein Kampf. Well, that's not submitting Mein Kampf. That's rewriting it and changing it into something different. Listen again.
Watered down rewrite. We changed all the wording so that a plagiarism checker wouldn't be able to find it if they ran it through one. We interlaced.
They changed all the wording so that a plagiarism checker couldn't find it.
Sentences of theory in between almost every other sentence of.
They interlaced sentences of theory in between almost every other sentence. James is admitting that when they did the Mein Kampf hoax paper as part of the grievance studies, they rewrote basically all of Mein Kampf. Bro. So it was all intellectually dishonest from the very beginning. Changing the wording makes it a different document. This is basic. Guys, when you're in graduate, okay, I learned a couple things when I had to do a PhD. These were things that James didn't learn because James did a math PhD. I did a psychology PhD. Our programs were fundamentally different. What I learned in my psychological program was that if you change the wording of things to make it different, then you're allowed to use it as a different document because it's no longer the same document. It is a fundamentally different document. James created a completely different document. Yup. Unbelievable. Yes, but midwits don't understand the difference. Exactly. I mean, the whole thing is like, you're not allowed to plagiarize directly, which is what people get in trouble for. They plagiarize directly and they just change a word or two here and there. But if you're fundamentally rewriting the document, you should still cite the source and say, I got this from like this person, but you do like a parenthetical reference. But like, it's a different document. It's different ideas. We're 5 minutes in. He's already admitted this is not even the first hoax he's perpetrated.
Of Mein Kampf. We wrote a very long introduction that was completely novel to the paper that had nothing to do with Mein Kampf, where Hitler lays out a 14-point plan. We combined and condensed it down to 8. There were substantial changes, and yet this was more than enough for us to be able to claim that they had reproduced the logic and the ethos of Hitler.
No, James. No, it wasn't more than enough. You lied then too. This is not proving that what James did with this communist manifesto hoax is acceptable. It's proving that this was not the first time that he pulled this hoax. That he lied back then too, and no one thought to compare the actual copy of Mein Kampf to what James wrote, so no one knew he was pulling a hoax. How many other things in the grievance studies were just completely hoaxed and no one had just ever looked into it? Because everyone wanted to own the libs. Everyone wanted to own the academic institutions. I always thought it looked really cunning and manipulative person to be willing to pull off these kinds of stunts. Like just the thought of deliberately lying. See, I have no problem with lying to academic journals. I really don't. I have no problem with it. I actually thought this is why the grievance studies affair was so effective, right? Because if you're submitting to peer review academic journals where you're supposed to go through several layers of peer review before your stuff even gets close to being published, that is a completely different thing than what James did with this communist manifesto thing, because it proves the process of peer review is just absolute bullshit, and it is, and that's an important point to make, and I have no problem with them making it. But now finding out that James claimed to have gotten Mein Kampf published when in fact he basically completely rewrote the whole thing and then just claimed it was Mein Kampf in exactly the same way that when he got the Communist Manifesto published, he basically rewrote the whole thing so it wasn't the Communist Manifesto anymore, and then said, look at me, I got them to publish communism, when he didn't. It's intellectually dishonest. There's no integrity.
For intersectional feminism, putting legs under Rush Limbaugh's claim of feminazi that he always used to say on the air. Now, the point that I bring up with this, 2 points. Number one, I repeated this experiment, and that's what we're going to talk about here today. And number two, conservatives loved it. Conservatives went bonkers. In fact, the thing they always wanted to talk about and lead with was not the rest of the hoax. It was the rewrite of Mein Kampf. That to them was the nail in the coffin. That was it. That proved feminism and woke and academia were irredeemable.
And now we know it was
even
a fraud.
though this was a very subtle hoax that barely passed muster, right? And it got in a small feminist social work journal. It was accepted for publication in a journal called Aphilia, which nobody's ever heard of unless you're in feminist social work. So it's yes, it's an academic journal. Yes, it was peer reviewed, but it's an extremely obscure publication.
James, every academic journal is an extremely obscure publication. Literally every academic journal is only really relevant to academics in that field. So this isn't even, James is saying, it's totally fine that I completely rewrote Mein Kampf and then claimed it was actual Mein Kampf because it just got published in this small little peer-reviewed academic journal. They're all small. They're all niche.
Extremely obscure publication called Aphilia has a readership of approximately like 10. You can actually go and look at their metrics and see virtually none of the papers they publish is ever cited. The vast majority are not. And the ones that are cited fewer than 5 or 10 times. It's a very inconsequential publication. But conservatives were like, bang, got them. This proves a lot about feminism. This proves a lot about even fields like social work and where they fall in. This proves a ton about academia. This proves a lot about woke. And
So further proof that conservatives are also intellectually dishonest and that conservative pundits are also intellectually dishonest. Exactly like what I said about Arun McIntyre earlier. This is what they're all like. The priority is not on intellectual integrity. The priority is not on truth. The priority is not on hinging into reality and seeing what's going on. The priority is always and forever on owning the libs, bro. And that's all that matters to conservatives. Please don't take this the wrong way. I mean no harm by it, but would it not be a little more productive to spend time on infighting and more time combating the left? Hi, Truth Warrior. Let's see if you've ever chatted into my channel before. Let's look at your channel history. Truth Warrior, 0 chats in on my channel ever. Hey, Truth Warrior, have you ever watched a single episode of Socialism Saturday? Let us know in the chat. If you don't, you're going to get permanently banned. Truth Warrior, have you ever watched a single episode of Socialism Saturday? Did you watch the last episode? I don't usually comment on live streams. Well, you're commenting today, so you can tell me, which ones have you watched? Which episodes have you watched? What was the last episode of Socialism Saturday that you watched? Don't go and look on my channel for a name. Say it right now. What was... Okay. Explain abolish the family to us. Go. Explain who Sophie Lewis is and what the abolish the family argument on the left is. Go. We're waiting. You're claiming you watched the Sophie Lewis Socialism Saturday ones, then you should be able to explain to us who Sophie Lewis is and what the abolish the family argument is on the left. Go. Nope, that's not it. No. Wrong. Do you want to try again? Completely incorrect. So now I don't believe you've actually watched those episodes. Do you want to give it another try? Actually, let's do this. Define capitalism for us. How does Sophie Lewis define capitalism? It seems to me, Truth Warrior, that you might need to spend some more time on the content that you claim to want, because I have probably over 1,000 hours of abolish the family content on my channel, and you don't understand it. No, that's not what I asked. Well, how does the left define private property? Truth Warrior, are you an adult? I have no problem stopping the entire stream to make examples of people like you. Are you an adult? Are you capable of clicking on a thumbnail of content you want to watch versus clicking on a thumbnail of content you don't want to watch? So we know you don't understand Abolish the Family, which means you need to go watch more Abolish the Family content, which is readily available to you on my channel right now. We know you don't know how the left defines capitalism and private property ownership. We know that, no. Oh, here it is. There it is. I mean, I told you no harm, but your attitude proves all your detractors right. Narcissistic cluster B. James, see? It always works out this way, doesn't it? It always works out this way. It always works out this way. People come on the channel. They pretend that they've been in my audience before. Where was this person? Hang on. They pretend. I just don't know why. I just don't know why you're spending so much time talking about James Lindsay. And then we ask them, and they have no channel history, no chat history. And then they just say, I watched all your live streams, and I just don't usually comment on it. And then we say, which ones have you watched? And they say they've watched the Abolish the Family stuff, and they can't even define Abolish the Family. They can't talk about Abolish the Family. They have no idea what that's about. They have no idea about the activists. They can't even do a basic definition of the term of capitalism. And then every single time, without fail, you're a narcissist. This is James Lindsay's audience, guys. This is the game that James Lindsay's audience plays. And what's most revealing, every single time we do this little exercise with these retards, They don't have a basic definition of the word capitalism. They don't know what the left means when they say private property ownership. They don't have a basic 101 level understanding of anything about the left. And yet they come in here to try to gaslight me into not debunking James's bullshit. Every single time. So thank you, retard, for allowing me to make an example of you. Let's keep going.
Received accolades from conservatives for that specific thing. So much so that at times they overblow it so much that I'm kind of like, ooh, that's uncomfortable. For years, consistently, everywhere I go, that was great. That was one of the best things I ever heard. Of course, the academics weren't happy. And then the nerds online, the left-leaning nerds online who are right and proper, what I call the very smart people, weren't happy. But the fact of the matter is that the conservative crowd loved it. Now, this year, this October, I repeated the experiment. To tell you the short story of it, I was flying to Alaska, and I thought, well, I need to write, it's kind of funny that the New Discourses podcast has never had the Communist Manifesto read. I was like, maybe I should reread that and figure out, the main body of it's 2 chapters, and so I should do a 2-chapter, maybe 2-piece podcast, and then I reread the whole thing, and it's actually really short. It's only like 13 pages. So maybe a 1-piece read of the Communist Manifesto, or at least the body of the Communist Manifesto, as a podcast.
The Communist Manifesto is not just 13 pages. I don't know what version of it James has, but the Communist Manifesto is absolutely not just 13. It is short, but it's not 13 pages.
And then in the back of my head at the same time, I had this thought that the woke right had reached what I was calling the woke right. And again, I don't know how many times I'm going to have to say this before people believe it. I'm using that term for 2 reasons. 3, I guess. Number 1, I actually think it fits, although I understand why people are confused. Number 2, I don't have a better one. I've had a lot of suggestions, and I haven't heard one that sticks better yet. And I'm not using something that makes them sound cool, like neo-fascists or dissident right, or even what they prefer, which seems to be new right.
Yeah.
I'm not the new right.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting that the James stands always start off with, I'm a longtime follower and I watch all of your content. I just never comment on live streams, which is why I have no channel history. And I just think you're great. And I think everything you're doing is great. But I don't know why you just won't leave James alone. Every time. Guys, this is why you got to be vigilant. Every time you guys see comments on channels like, I'm unsubscribing, I've been here forever and I've supported your work, but those aren't real. Those are never real. It's always bullshit. It's designed to get other people to try to lose faith in you, so they disconnect as well. The smart people can see through it. The low IQ retards can't. Sadly, there are more low IQ retards on the internet than smart people. It's the way it goes. Right.
They're a bunch of fascists. But at any rate, 3, so I don't have a better term. That's number 2, right? So number 1 is it actually fits. Number 2, although I understand why it's confusing. Number 2 is I don't have a better term, and I think I would use one. But number 3 is that it pisses them off a lot. It's like they want that term off of them like it's radioactive waste, and the iron law of woke overreaction has never missed ever.
See, the thing about the woke right bullshit is that like, okay, like I'm in the groyper group chats. I'm in some of the groyper group chats, not all of them. There are like 8,000 groyper group chats, but I'm in enough of them to know what's going on. I'm in enough of them to know what's being said, and I talk to enough people to know what's going on, okay? Like, James is saying the term woke right just incenses them, it pisses them off. It really doesn't. They mostly think it's stupid. They're like, why are we even talking about this? They're like, this is dumb. James is being a retard. And then, but James thinks it really pisses them off because he gets mean tweets on Twitter, because that's just what people do when they're like, you're being ridiculous and stupid. But it doesn't actually piss them off in the way that James thinks it does. What James is doing is projecting his own bullshit, because James gets really pissed off when people reply to him on Twitter with things he doesn't like. Oh man, does James get pissed off. As evidence from the fact that James has called me a narcissist, a sociopath, says I have borderline personality disorder, has photoshopped evidence about me, has now almost like gotten very, very close to calling me a pedophile, which, by the way, the minute that James Lindsay calls me a pedophile, like coming out of his own mouth, I'm waiting for that day to happen, because I'm suing his ass into oblivion, and I will own New Discourses after that. But it's like he's the one that's having all these emotional outbursts. He's the one that's constantly spiraling on Twitter. He's the one he called the groypers animals on a podcast he was on. He literally called them animals. So James is saying they're so pissed off by it. No. James is the one that's so pissed off, and he's projecting his own emotions onto other people. Well, did you hear that he started calling them the Gnostic woke right? There's actually a tweet about this. Like, I'll go back and find it, but James literally tweeted that the woke right is Gnostic. Everything is Gnostic, according to James.
So they are identified by this term. And for those of you that don't remember ancient history, by the way, when we started using the term woke to describe the woke, primarily back in 2020, the left did not want us calling them that. It was their term. We're not allowed to use it at first. There's no such thing as woke. Define woke. There is no woke. Woke is just a conservative boogeyman that they've invented to try to discredit people of color, blah, blah, blah. They didn't want that term stuck to them, and it was their term. Well, guess what? We're having the same debate now about woke right, and it appears to have stuck to them like napalm. They can't get it off. It's burning like hell, and every time they try, they spread it and set something else on fire. So be it.
Okay,
we also had this debate about OK Groomer. You remember all the conservatives, like the smart conservatives and the influencers that came out and were like, well, I think it's not respectable at all to call these people groomers. Like, dude, they got a drag queen in your kid's classroom. They're groomers. They say that the point is alternate modes of kinship with your kids. They're groomers. They say that queer is a code, they say that family friendly is a code for the queer family your kid's going to go meet on the street after their intervention with a drag queen. They're groomers, right? But we had this huge debate about, does groomer fit? And there's still people who clutch their little pearls about groomer. Well, okay, so we're debating about woke right. Some people don't like being called woke right, so now we have to all clutch our pearls and freak out. But I'm calling them that because of the lack of a better term, and because it fits, and because it drives them freaking crazy. They don't get to be called something cool if they're going to throw fits like children when they get called something they don't like. Like, are you kidding me? Like, you wanted to be called something awesome like the new right, and we're going to call you something lame like the woke right. Like, that's how this works. You're being lame, so you get stuck with a lame label. Welcome to reality. They don't hesitate to call me names. I'm not going to hesitate to call them names back. And when the shoe fits,
they've been called. Who wrote the book about the new right? Was that Malice who wrote that? Michael Malice wrote a book called The New Right, like 4 or 5 years ago, something like that, like a long ass time ago. The new right is not a new term.
It's all you can say is oof, size large, and so okay.
Oof, size
I was flying
large.
to Alaska, and I thought the woke right needed a nice academic hoax. I figured, I've tried to criticize them, I've tried to explain it, I've tried to point them out. And in fact, not only was I not getting any traction, not only was I getting told to shut the F up, not only was I told wait till after the election, which it's now after the election, hello. Not only was I being told all these kinds of things, I was also being canceled. These people were systematically spreading narratives about me, like that I hate Christians, lie. That I attack Christians, lie.
Catholics.
That I hate Catholics,
yes.
lie.
True.
That I hate conservatives, lie.
True.
That I'm the divisive character here,
True.
lie. And other things. They were deliberately spreading lies to people that I work with in order that those people would not come or not invite me to come speak and would not have anything to do with me and would shun using my work. So they were canceling me, which is a woke trait. So I thought, well, you can't criticize them. And if you try to criticize them or try to expose them, they cancel you. I've been here before. I know what to do. You expose them through proving your point with an academic style hoax. Okay, so I thought, all right, whatever. Maybe there's something in the Communist Manifesto I can use. I had that on the back burner as something maybe entertaining to do at some point and didn't think too much of it. Fast forward into reading the actual Communist Manifesto on my flight after I played on the Wi-Fi for a little bit. If you don't know, the flight it would turn out it was from Chicago's O'Hare to Anchorage is a 7.5 hour flight. That's a fairly long flight to be sitting in the front seat of a 737, which is not terribly comfortable for that much time. And you get bored. So I played on the internet, and I got bored playing on the internet. I don't know if you know that social media almost always gets boring after you sat on a plane for a little while playing. After about an hour or two, you're like, God, I need anything else to do. So I started reading the Communist Manifesto, and I'm reading the first chapter of it. And again, my mind is not on how do I hoax the woke right. My mind is on, will this make a good podcast? And I'm like, this would actually make a good podcast. The last time I read it, I don't think I understood it clearly enough to know how to make a podcast out of it. And it's going to be very hard for me to read parts of it today to you and not go into that, to not explain what the Communist Manifesto is about. We'll do that podcast soon, where we do the whole thing in one block. But as I was reading the first chapter, and again, it's not very long. The whole thing, 2 chapters, is about 13 pages long. Depends on the document size. But I'm talking in the PDF I have. I think it's exactly 13 pages long. And so I'm like, reading this first chapter, about a page and a half down from the top, I'm like, oh shit, this is exactly what Karl Marx is saying about the bourgeoisie is exactly what the woke right says about liberalism in the so-called post-war liberal consensus. I'm not going to unpack all their freaking concepts too much right now. That's a different podcast. But
if Karl Marx was saying exactly the same thing about the bourgeoisie that the so-called woke right are saying about liberalism, then James wouldn't have to have rewritten 90% of the document. If it was exactly the same, no rewrites would have been necessary except for changing a word or two. So James's own actions prove that this whole thing is just an epic cope. It was so similar. It was so close. Well, then why'd you rewrite 90% of it?
I was like, it's the same critique. So all we got to do is a very naive word swap and then clean it up. And we've got something we can submit. And of course, the only publication, there are a couple of them that I kind of vaguely know about. The only publication that I'm really aware of that traffics in woke right, Christian nationalist brand in this case, but there are multiple brands, of course. But in this case, it's a Christian nationalist brand, is the American Reformer.
Do you guys know why James is so aware of the American Reformer? James says, this is the only publication I'm aware of. Okay. Do you want to know why James is so aware of the American Reformer? Here, I'll show you. If we go back over to my article, and this is James Lindsay's Repressive Tolerance, you can find this over on my Substack, which is Karlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. Let me show you exactly why James was so aware of the American Reformer. If we scroll down, and this is thanks to Mizakan. This is a big, long post, and you can read it on the Substack. I'm not going to read the whole thing. This is a big, long post from Michael O'Fallon. Michael O'Fallon is the person that funds New Discourses. You can also see receipts for that over on the Substack. This is Nate Fisher. Nate Fisher is someone, and you can go back and look at the tweets between Nate Fisher and James, and Nate Fisher and Michael O'Fallon. Nate Fisher is one of the co-founders of the American Reformer. He has been in an ongoing feud with James Lindsay for literally years. And I saw some of this, and I was on James's side at first. Like way early on when I saw this, I was actually on James's side because I still had a different perspective back then. My perspective has changed significantly. But James and Michael O'Fallon have been going at Nate Fisher for literally years online. So the reason that they targeted the American Reformer specifically is because they were in an online feud and they wanted to embarrass Nate Fisher. That's what happened. It's not that the American Reformer is a flagship Christian nationalist publication, because it's not. Most people had never heard of it. It's because they had a personal vendetta, and this is how James makes decisions. It's about people that he likes versus people he doesn't like, people he's best friends with versus people that that don't agree with him. So that's how he made the decision to go after them. Yeah, most people had never heard of them. The only reason James had heard of them was because of his ongoing war with Nate Fisher.
Which was founded by guys in cahoots with Charles Haywood, where if you ever listen to my episode of What the Fuck is Christian Nationalism, WTF is Christian Nationalism.
That was what that was about, Nate Fisher.
I read through his Crazy Pants Manifesto, his so-called foundationalist manifesto, which for the philosophers out there, let's pause. He's not using the word foundationalism the way that usually philosophers use it. He's got his own crazy pants philosophy of foundationalism, and his proto-fascist lunatic manifesto is not unrelated to this project of Christian nationalism. In particular, Charles Haywood, who wrote that, is the creator of the Society for American Civic Renewal, or SACR, and Nate Fisher, who is the creator of New Founding, which has as a print subsidiary American Reformer. Nate Fisher is the leader of the Dallas chapter of the Society for American Civic Renewal.
So he's admitting it. He specifically targeted American Reformer because Nate Fisher is someone that he does not like.
Guys are in cahoots. In fact, Haywood, I don't know that Haywood's funding this project, but I think Haywood's funding this project. And so they're not disconnected.
I think Israel is funding James Lindsay. I think that Michael O'Fallon has pretty clear ties to the Israeli government. Why? Because he's posted on Twitter that he has ties to the Israeli government. Michael O'Fallon is basically the owner of New Discourses. It's actually not. I'm pretty sure the owner of New Discourses isn't actually James. I'm pretty sure it's Michael O'Fallon. I could be wrong about that, but the documents that I've seen seem to say that Michael O'Fallon is the actual owner of New Discourses. Michael O'Fallon is funded by Israel. James is funded by Israel. Is it any wonder that everyone who opposes Israel and doesn't want to put the interests of Israel over America, is it any wonder that James is going after them and smearing them and using Marcuse's tactic of repressive tolerance to make their ideas untenable in a polite society?
So anyway, I know about the American Reformer, so I was like, well, I'll send it there. They take essays. I looked up their submission requirements, no problem. But all I did was I took these, stretch it turned out about 6 pages out of the 13 of the whole document. I took this stretch of about 6 pages of the Communist Manifesto, copy pasted them into an email, a blank email form that I sent to myself with the words original text. And then I hit reply and I took all of the text and pasted it again and started tweaking it. Everywhere I saw something like communism, I replaced it with the new Christian right. Everywhere I saw words like proletariat, I replaced it with Christian right or new Christian right. You getting the idea? Everywhere I saw the word.
Let's just go back. I was just replacing words. I was just replacing a word or two here and there, guys. I just replaced a word or two here and there. Every time I saw communism, I replaced it with Christian right. Oh, yeah? Oh, yeah? Then why is the document 90% rewritten? This was not just replacing a word or two. This was substantially rewriting the entire document.
Bourgeoisie. I replaced it with something like the post-war liberal consensus or classical liberalism or liberals or liberalism, something to that effect. And then I just fixed the language, right? Because obviously Karl Marx is talking about certain things and these guys talk about other things.
Guys, I didn't rewrite 90% of the document. I just fixed the language. Regarding the grievance host, oh, Helen Pluckrose hates me. She hates my entire community. But to be fair, I think Helen Pluckrose is out of her mind. I really do. I think Helen Pluckrose is insane. I've never had any interaction with Peter Boghossian, but I don't have high hopes for him. We are going to start targeting Peter Boghossian at some point just to see what he does. And when I say targeting, what I mean is we're going to start making a special effort to make sure Peter Boghossian is tagged to high heaven when we have clips of the left of like just primary source training, just to see what he does with it. And if Peter Boghossian is intellectually honest about it, or if he does what everyone else does, which is pretend they don't want to see it or pretend that they have some grievance with me that they made up that isn't even real, we're gonna be sussing that out. Yeah, James fixed it. He fixed it. He fixed it to rewrite 90% of it.
Faith isn't really on the table so much with Karl Marx. Faith is a big deal to these guys. So just reoriented the concepts. This is a pretty direct transliteration. It is, by way of what I've already talked about, way closer than what I did with Hitler's Mein Kampf. Way closer. Way more similar. In fact, it was so similar. It turns out,
Wait. So James rewrote 90% of the Communist Manifesto, but it was still way less rewrites than what he did when he did Mein Kampf. Again, James is proving he's been intellectually dishonest from literally the very beginning.
Finish the story. So I send this, it takes about 2 hours on my phone to do this first edit, send it to myself, get to Alaska, do my work in Alaska that I was there to be invited to do, had some free time before we went to dinner one night, sat down for a couple hours in the hotel room, tweaked it, wasn't quite happy with it, realized it was too long for the submission requirements, flew home from Alaska a few days later after a trip to Miami for another thing, came home. So I did Alaska to Miami. That was a corner to corner flight, right? And so then I came home eventually from this. And when I got home, I edited it one more time, put it under the name Marcus Carlson, and submitted it to American Reformer. The end. That was my entire thing. I didn't think it was going to get accepted. I didn't pay too much attention. I made a burner email account in Marcus Carlson's name, which I checked once in a while. And after 10 days, it hadn't been accepted. And they said on their website, if you haven't heard back from us in 10 days, we didn't accept it. So I thought, well, it failed. So I stopped looking at the email, because part of the story actually matters, I guess. And so then, because a lot of people are accusing me of what I'm going to tell you next. And so it didn't get accepted as far as I knew. So I stopped checking the email. Like, who cares? I don't use that email for anything. And then on Thanksgiving, which was the 28th, of November, I had this weird feeling like,
whoa, Mr. I just saw your Rumble rant. Mr. in with the $100 Rumble rant. This is why we are leaving one war and marching right into a war with Iran. Then they will say, I told you so. I can't with this guy. Yeah, Mr. I really do appreciate that. Thank you so much for the generous Rumble rant.
I should check that email. And I went and checked the email, and I actually had a reply from the American Reformer, from one of their editors. And what it said was, and I quote, "We're going to need a headshot for this." That's all it said, something like that. Maybe I don't have the quote right. That's the gist of it. I don't have it in front of me. But they just wanted a picture to put with the article. So I thought, oh my gosh. So I went and got a stock photo, named it Marcus Headshot 03.jpg, sent it to them, and never heard back. And then I was telling the guys I work with here at New Discourses, particularly Mike O'Fallon on the phone, and a couple other guys. I was telling them that, hey, this has happened, and I think this is going to be a thing. It's going to be relevant on our horizon coming soon. We need to prepare and figure out what we're going to do with this. And we get off the phone, and then Mike goes and Googles Marcus Carlson's name after we get off the phone, and lo and behold, they already published the article. So that was on the 8th or 9th, and I guess 29th. And then, as it turns out, they'd published it on the, maybe it was on the 28th. I don't remember. But it turns out they had published it on the 18th. They'd published it like 10 days before, or thereabouts, 11 days before. And I immediately went to the website. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it's there. And I'm scrolling through the comments, and I freak out because one of the comments is like, hey guys, did you know that this is the Communist Manifesto? Like, it's like, exactly, here's quotes for, you may want to ask your author why he pulled so much from the Communist Manifesto. So one of their commenters, one of their readers, who seems to be, a fairly bright person, noticed this.
Well, listen, I noticed parts of the Communist Manifesto too when I read it. So there are smart people out there that, because there was one line in particular that was just so obvious if you've read the Communist Manifesto a million times like I have. Like there was this one line that was just like, it stuck out. Like this, there's a specter over blah, 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 like whatever. I can't repeat it verbatim, but I'll recognize it when I see it. Like that was in there. And so I knew it was the Communist Manifesto. Someone else knew it was the Communist Manifesto. But you know what? Most people, the vast majority of people, have not read the Communist Manifesto a million times. The vast majority of people have not studied the Communist Manifesto. And originally, I was actually a little bit pissed off at the American Reformer. I was like, how did they not know? And then I kind of thought about it. I was like, there are not many people that are super wonky about this stuff. And maybe a little bit of grace is required, because if James rewrote 90% of the document, then unless you're super nerdy about this stuff, you're probably going to miss it.
And where the editors did not, and called it out in the comments, which had been sitting there for 10 days by the time I even knew it was on the internet. And so, no, for those of you conspiracy theorists who think I'm the person who left the comment, I'm sure that that person would be mortified to think that that's what's going on. It wasn't me. I found it and was like, oh no, we have to act fast.
This brings together an interesting question for me. Did James leave that comment? Did someone associated with James leave that comment? Because, quite frankly, I don't actually believe a word that comes out of James's mouth at this point. And this whole thing where he's James basically just proactively offered, guys, I didn't leave the comment. I swear I didn't leave the comment. No one accused me of leaving the comment. It actually hadn't occurred to me that James or someone who works with him could have been the person that left it until James just denied it so emphatically in this podcast. But it's like the man doth protest too much. And James has already projected his own fragility in other parts of this podcast. So did he do it? I don't know. You have to be the judge.
So then I put together the release and we came out with it the following Tuesday, pretty quick, right? Turnaround over the weekend, time to write the article and so on. Okay, so that's what I did. Is I rewrote 6 pages of the Communist Manifesto to flatter their ideological view of the world, and preserving the conflict theory, the logic, the dialectic, and everything else, and the demagoguery. And they stand by this to this day and say that it represents, and I quote correctly, a reasonable aggregation of some new right ideas. So they've stood by the article and said, yes, this represents us. The reaction on the internet has been unbelievable this week. A lot of people who are woke right are extraordinarily mad, and they're out defending their right to be critical theorists. As conservatives, they're out defending their right to be critical theorists. Because I'm doing this, because I'm debunking this, because I watch James's content and I call out all the places where he's full of shit, James thinks I'm defending my right to be a critical theorist. Okay, Jimmy. Okay. The right to think Marx had good writing and good ideas. He's talking about Sargon of Akkad there, by the way. Critique of that conservatives apparently have always agreed with Karl Marx about the critiques of liberalism. I mean, just fantastic stuff, that they're in fact actually postmodern, and that postmodernism is actually needed for conservatism. It's just unbelievable how they've just decided to own it. But even more shocking than that isn't that the woke right, really woke right guys, the hardcores, came out with this, which, I figured they might mention that, but the fact that that's their main line of defense, other than that I'm a terrible person and a fraud of some kind,
yes, you are a fraud. True.
Really interesting that they ran with this line. But true. The other interesting part is that a lot of people that you didn't think were woke right and didn't really have a dog in the race have dived on the grenade really hard, like Tim Pool and Mike Cernovich. And what in the heck?
Tim Pool and Mike Cernovich have exposed themselves for being actors on the woke right. James is surrounded by woke right influencers. The woke right influencers are everywhere. He's making the woke right influencers expose themselves. Come on.
Like, why are you guys going hard in the paint on this? What's going on? And to say that people have noticed is an understatement. So why did I do this? I wanted to do this because I wanted to test if they would apply exactly the same kind of logic that Karl Marx applies to their conclusions. Same logic, same dialectic, same demagoguery.
James, just because you're applying the same type of thought process doesn't mean you come to the same conclusions, because your input into that thought process is completely fucking different. James is like, oh my God. James is saying, okay, so you guys can do like 2 + 2 = 4. Guess what? 1 + 3 also equals 4. Guess what? 10 - 6 also equals 4. 2 × 2 also equals 4. It's like you can have like the same like the same kind of like structure or something to say like, you know what, I think that 2 + 2 = 4, and then someone else says I think that 3 + 1 = 4. It doesn't actually mean you're getting there by going by using the same thing. It just means you might arrive at the same end result, but you've taken completely different ways to get to that end result. Just because someone says, and that analogy may not be perfect, but it's the best that I have right this second. Just because someone says, listen, man, there are like honest critiques to make of liberalism, does not mean that they're a communist. This is like saying like, okay, so I'll give you another more modern example. People on the far left are not on Israel's side in the Israel-Palestinian conflict. People on the dissident right are not on Israel's side in the Israel-Palestinian conflict. But the reasoning they have behind it are two completely different things. People on the dissident right fundamentally oppose Israel, the interests of Israel being put before the interests of America. They don't want any American involvement. They don't want America going to war with Iran on behalf of Israel. Some of them legitimately hate Jews, though not all of them do, honestly. A lot of them are just more like they're more against the pro-Israel policy that America has. On the left, they believe the Palestinians are in a glorious uprising against the settler colonists that are the evil capitalists that have been oppressing the Palestinians ever since the creation of Israel. And so, of course, they're going to take the sides of the Palestinians because intifada on the left means worldwide socialist revolution. So just because both the far left and the far right are anti-Zionist doesn't mean they have the same logic and rationale for why they're doing it. They might be arriving at the same conclusion. Yeah, liberalism has some problems. Like, liberalism has some problems, and those problems are X, Y, B, and Z. But it doesn't mean they're taking the same path to get to that conclusion. James is basically saying, if you agree with anyone on the far left for any reason, that means you're a communist. That's his argument. If you agree with anyone on the far left for any reason, you are literally a communist. Well, no. I reject that because that's just not real life. Okay, let's listen to a little bit more.
Same rhetoric, so to speak. Same intrinsic conflict theory. Us versus them, and we the oppressed have the intrinsic upper hand. And that there's a conspiracy theory working against us as a population. That the Marx's argument in this part of the Communist Manifesto is that the bourgeoisie, by its oppressive nature, creates its antagonist, the proletariat that's going to rise up. And the argument in the paper that I wrote and submitted which is called the Liberal Consensus and the New Christian Right, argues that the liberal consensus and classical liberalism and modern liberalism themselves have created the reemergence of a new Christian right that, is resurrecting old, what they call conservative ideas that have been banished by that so-called post-war liberal consensus, which, by the way, are primarily fascist ideas and, to a degree, racist ideas. That's what's actually excluded. The goal in their own telling, by the way, I did a podcast about this, so you can actually go listen to it, where I read their words. The goal in their telling is that following World War II, all of the liberal order of the world decided never again. There will not be another Hitler. There will not be another Holocaust. And so we're going to exclude from the Overton window all forms of...
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly right, rationalist. This is exactly right. If James were being a responsible adult and could handle intellectual disagreement, this would be a completely different situation. But this whole situation is manifesting because James can't handle intellectual disagreement. When I first started the war with James Lindsay, it was entirely an intellectual disagreement. It was entirely grounded on, I have very distinct intellectual grievances with your work, and we're gonna start putting those grievances out there, and we're gonna start pressuring you to talk about those grievances, and if you don't talk about those grievances, we're gonna be a pain in the ass until you do. And that grievance was that James was not, and this had to do specifically with Abolish the Family. It had to do with when James published his book. Actually, I'm just going to make myself sad because I'm kind of done with this with James. The original intellectual grievances had to do when they published the book, The Queering of the American Child, and basically didn't mention capitalism in the entire book, which is the whole foundation of queer theory. Queer theory, queer ideology, the goal is the annihilation of capitalism. That's the Mary Nardini Gang, which is one of the original queer anarchist groups that has been hugely influential in queer activist circles. They say that their goal is the abolition of capitalism all the time. James wouldn't talk about this. Instead, he was making up all this stuff that has nothing to do with what queer anarchists and queer activists were talking about in reality. And so the war against James Lindsay started as a way of saying, James, you asshole, you and Logan Lansing wrote an entire fucking book where you didn't talk about the origin of these ideas, or about Abolish the Family, or about social reproduction theory, or about how the goal of gender ideology is not to train your kids, it's not to groom your kids, it's not to sexualize your kids, it's to convince your kids that gender doesn't exist. Like, you asshole, what the fuck? And so we had a very specific list of intellectual grievances. We tried to be funny about it, but no intellectual discussion at all. And now we're like over a year later, over a fucking year later. And now James's accusations against me continue to get more and 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 more vile. And he has not intellectually engaged once with any of the arguments that I've made, because he can't. Because if he did, he would lose. And it's not even close, because I have primary source video evidence of every single thing that I say, so that people can listen to this coming out of the mouths of real leftists. This isn't coming from me. This is not something that I made up. I have a massive archive of video that can prove every single thing that I say is true. James doesn't have that. And that's why he makes up rumors like I'm a narcissist or a sociopath or borderline personality disorder, or I totally just want to fuck him, bro. Or the latest one where he's getting very, very close to calling me a pedophile. Good luck, James. Good luck if you do that, bro. For real. And I mean this when I say, the minute that James gets anywhere close to tweeting that I'm a pedophile is the minute that the lawyer's getting on the phone and James is going to have a lawsuit. And it's not even going to be close, James, because you accuse me of being a pedophile. You're accusing me of a serious crime, which is called defamation per se. So I don't even have to prove damages. Although you continuing to tweet out over and over and over again all this bullshit to your audience, that has had damages on me. Now I'm willing to take them because I'm wrong. I am right and you are fucking wrong. And I'm willing to sit in that truth as long as I fucking have to. Why? Because I have the evidence and James does not. Which is why he resorts to character attacks and bullshit. And the minute that he crosses the line is the minute that I'm going to fucking own New Discourses. And then we'll see what's what. All right. I got to go have a call with my community, guys. If you want to find the Zoom information, it's over on my Substack. That is Carlin, KARLYN.substack.com. Go to the Unwoke Roundup email. It's right in the middle of the page. Scroll all the way down to the bottom. You will find the link for the Zoom call that we are having in about 5 minutes. This Zoom call is private. It's unrecorded. Come join other supporters in my community. We'll hang out for a couple hours. We'll chit-chat. We'll whatever you guys want. So that's what I'm going to go do now. I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, where we will actually stream about something that matters. All right, guys, that's all we have. Take care. We'll see you soon.
How are you feeling? How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer.
I'm not clear. How is it that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
That's difficult to answer.